Welcome to the Green Podcast. My name is Dylan Welch. I'm the CEO of green.org and Dylan Welch Media. Our goal with this podcast is to bring you the biggest names and leaders in renewable energy, clean technology, and sustainability so that you can stay up to date with the latest trends and everything that is happening in this world. Not only that, you'll get some action items for your life so that you can apply some amazing things and make your world a better place as well. Let's get the show started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Green Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Welch, and we have an awesome guest today. We've got Karin Burns, the CEO of San Diego Community Power. Karin was a speaker at our last Green Summit in 2022, and she's just doing some amazing things with the community here, really involved with the clean tech industries, the renewable energy industries. So I'm excited to chat and dive a little bit deeper. So Karin, first off, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Of course. Yeah, it's always a pleasure having a conversation. So for our audience, just kind of tell us a little bit about your background and San Diego Community Power.
Sure, happy to do that. So, I'm really passionate about bringing real solutions to address climate change and creating cultures and organizations that really focus on inclusion and equity. And building really exceptional teams driven by the belief in our mission and the purpose of our organization. So that's what really gets me excited. And that really defines a lot of what I've done over the past, say, decade, at the focus on the role and at the helm of high growth, community focused sustainability companies. I truly believe that climate change is the most pressing challenge of our time, and that it's going to take all of us working together to, change the direction that we're sort of headed in at the moment. And so just oh, sorry, I'll pause.
No, go ahead. Keep going, please.
Oh, I was going to say a little bit about my background. I've been at the helm of sustainability focused organizations for about a decade. First at Code Red, then the CEO of Build It Green. Had a stint in corporate strategy at Franklin Energy, and then most recently for over a year now here at San Diego Community Power. But it wasn't always that way, right? So I would say that people, like, my story is sort of one of somebody who started out really shy in life and then turned into a bit of a global explorer, and then coming back to the United States, turning into a really mission-driven, purpose-driven clean energy executive.
Yeah, so I mean, you have such an interesting background. I want to dive into that a little bit later, but first you touched on something really sort of the action items that people can make that actually have a difference. And you've had a pretty amazing career in sustainability, renewable energy. From your experience, what are a couple things that the average person can do to just make a little bit of a difference? Because as you said, climate change, definitely one of the most pressing issues we're facing. It's crazy hot this year. We're seeing record temperatures, and sometimes it can be a little bit scary, intimidating, and we're like, we can see it happening around us. It's there, but we don't know what we can do. So from your experience, what are a couple ways that, the average person who might be listening can make little changes in their lives to just be a little bit more sustainable or support companies or organizations that are pushing the envelope?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing I always think about is awareness and education, right? So getting educated. There are so many resources online. Our organization, our website alone, has a host of resources that you can use, that you can find. We're even getting ready to come out with additional tips, how to save energy, how to control the energy that you're using, what that looks like. And so really getting educated is truly the first step, just to understanding what steps can you take to lower your energy bill, but also to help us, get involved in greening the grid. And then there's, having a professional purpose and being mission driven. And if this is something that folks are really excited about, this is the next decade. This is the decade of the future of clean energy, right? We're in the middle of the transition. It's happening. There are so many opportunities, so many ways, so many lateral or transferable skills that folks can bring to our industry: marketing, finance, accounting, I mean, there's just so many, and that's one thing that we look to do is make sure that we're being really inclusive. And when someone comes to our organization with transferable skills, that we can teach them the energy business, right? And then, so we want to bring more people into the industry overall. It's growing very, very fast. And so that's also, something folks can think about. And then, showing support, understanding what clean energy is about. And then in our case, and we can talk a little bit about what San Diego Community Power is and what we do and how we got started, but opting up, to Power 100. And you don't have to wait another 10 or 20 years to get 100% clean renewable power to your house. If you're in one of our member agencies, you can do that today. So that's something else that folks can do.
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank you. You guys put out a lot of really good, helpful information. You support a lot of organizations in San Diego. And again, education is probably I don't want to say the easiest thing because you have to go out and make it happen for yourself to educate yourself. But again, there's YouTube videos, there's PDFs you can find. But you also mentioned something else, which I think is important too, is not only can you be more sustainable, but there's things you can do to either save money for yourself, which, who doesn't want to save more money, being more energy efficient, lowering those bills. And then also the other thing you said, in addition to saving money and being more sustainable, there's a ton of career opportunities so you can actually make money and be more sustainable and save money. It's kind of like the trifecta. So I appreciate all the resources you have building San Diego Community Power, creating jobs, because I've learned that when people have careers that they're truly passionate about and they're helping something that's bigger than themselves, it gives them that, extra energy to get up out of bed every day, to work harder. And again, it's such a big problem, but when you can actually count little things that add up, whether it's your energy bill going down and saying, wow, I use less energy than last month, or wow, I got a job and my career advanced and I'm making more money and this company I'm working for is doing really amazing things. It's a really cool kind of time we're living in where people can do that. So thank you for what you're doing at San Diego Community Power. We're going to talk about San Diego Community Power later, but now we're going to go back. We're kind of Quentin Tarantino-ing this interview, going like back and forth.
A little bit of a ping pong. We have some tennis going
Yeah,
on here. Okay, no
exactly.
problem.
So you've had a really interesting past. I know you've done a lot of traveling. Where did your sort of passion for sustainability come from in the first place? Can you kind of pinpoint that, or do you remember where that came from?
Yeah, I do actually. Funny you should ask, because I have been asked that question. I grew up and I grew up in a small beach town on the East Coast, right, mid-Atlantic. And I was saying I was really shy as a child. That does factor into this. So I really delved into academics and books, and I stole myself away in nature a lot. It was a place of refuge, a place of calmness, tranquility. So whether that was the woods or the ocean and the beach, different places that really spoke to me. And so I kind of lived the first part of my life much in that way until kind of two things happened that really changed the course of my own history. The first one was I got exposure to major environmental issues firsthand as a teenager growing up on the beach and seeing the toxic waste from New York City turn up on our shores. And so as that was happening, I launched our high school's first environmental club to bring awareness to these issues and then that kind of expanded into other issues that were surfacing at that time around rainforests and these other things. And so I got into it I got really in started getting educated and then getting aware and then advocating at that time in my life. And I'll say the next piece of that was I took a trip to Spain with my high school Spanish class, where suddenly that whole world of books kind of collided with real life. And so I was sort of having my own adventures, if you will. And then that went on, and I traveled the world for 7, 8 years doing a variety of things. And in that, you see both sustainability and environmental destruction, right? So I lived in a lot of emerging economies, from Indonesia to Brazil to China, also Europe, and that sort of, I like to call it the school of hard knocks, right? Because when you're on your own, living in all these foreign countries, you have both amazing and challenging experiences. But you learn a lot that way as well, in a way that you don't always understand when you're living it and going through it. It's only after the fact in reflection you can sit back and say, oh, wow, I'm really comfortable in uncertainty. Like I lived 7 years with a lot of uncertainty. I'm really comfortable. Or the fear, you like levels of fear, like I'm not afraid of that. I did this. Or, you just sort of the things that the pieces of you that evolve and grow when you're going through that. And of course, understanding, I call like the kernel of humanity, or everybody's I like to think of people as onions, not stinky onions, but just onions, and they have all these layers. And you pull those layers could be where you were born, where you were raised, your socioeconomic ethnicity, gender. You pull all that off, and there's still like this core humanity, right? And that's the core that I kind of see when I meet folks, because I've lived and I spoke multiple languages and in all these different countries, and there are patterns to people, right? There's pattern to humanity, and I think it's when I think about how that I combine that with the sustainability piece, right? Because we're humanity on a planet that um, we're rapidly causing a lot of challenges to, right? In terms of our climate crisis, and we've really got to work together to make this happen. It can't be something that one country or one gender or one socioeconomic group, one demographic kind of hoist or foist upon other folks. It's got to be this inclusive effort that crosses all of those boundaries, that goes back to our kernel, because that's the way we'll get buy-in. That's the way we'll actually actually see the change, right? And have that opportunity to really address this crisis in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up two really interesting things. One, when you grow up in an area where you can literally see and feel and touch, the effects of climate change, or see the garbage, that has a huge impact. But then also, as you mentioned, kind of traveling too, you get to branch out and see different neighborhoods, different countries. And what I've noticed too, especially as climate change has really come into sort of the mainstream conversation the last, say, 15, 20-ish years, is when I travel and then I go back and I visit another place and it's been 5, 10 years, you can really see the difference. Like you can be like, man, when I was here 5 years ago, it was not like this. Sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's for the worse. Like I remember I went to Mexico on the Yucatan Peninsula, and it was beautiful when I was there, like turquoise Caribbean waters.
Okay.
Then I came back about 5 years later, and the water was just brown with all this kind of gross seaweed. And I was really looking forward to like jumping in the ocean and being on this awesome trip. And all the people said the seaweed is kind of coming due to climate change and the ocean temperatures raising just a tiny bit, that it affects all the plants at the bottom of the ocean. They die, they float up, and then they land on shore. So it's really crazy seeing that juxtaposition of just 5 years turning this beautiful place into kind of a murky brown place. So yeah, really getting that, like we can really see that tangible change happening, which is kind of scary. But in a certain sense, trying to see the glass half full, it can hopefully kick people in the butt to, really make some changes. So before like we again kind of dive into the San Diego community power stuff, I just think it's interesting that you spent 7, 8 years traveling all over. How are you able to do that, and kind of tell us about your travels?
Sure. And I like I said, I was insatiably curious. If I hadn't mentioned that, very shy and insatiably curious. That's a very unusual combination. And of course, by the end of that time, the shyness was gone. There's a little bit of fearlessness that emerges. But um, I started out. I, I started out with study abroads in college, and that sent me to India on a Fulbright scholarship right after college. And from there, I just found ways to work and engage. It wasn't so much that I was traveling as I was living. And so I was working on that. I ended up writing a book. It's a great sleep tonic. If anyone's having, trouble getting to sleep, I recommend it. Only because, I would go back and write it a little differently. I'd have more stories in there. I'd have more of the experience of my own experience. It was much more of a sociology book versus a weaving it in. So I would do little things differently, but so that's what I was doing my first year. Then I was in Indonesia. I was in the Suharto overthrow of 1998, I think it
Wow.
was. Evacuated to Australia, so I spent a bit of time in Australia. Then I came back to the U.S. for graduate school, and then immediately went back over to Asia, to Hong Kong, where I stayed for close to 4 or 5 years-ish.
Wow.
And I was working there in investment banking. And so that was, again, and I was traveling all the time. So I traveled all over East Asia, Southeast Asia during that time, working primarily. Had my own company there for a bit, and then moved to the Middle East to work in sort of private equity finance. And that's where I really saw the global opportunity for solar, right? When you're standing in the desert, you have this epiphany when you're standing and looking at this desert, and what they're pulling up is oil and gas. But what they have is this incredible resource of solar. And this was back in the early 2000s. So folks hadn't really grasped that opportunity yet and that potential. And I think I think it's come since then. But I remember feeling that moment of this sense of this is the future, and wanting to be part of that and realizing that I could come full circle. But yeah, so that's that. But I also did some traveling, like, in Brazil and Indonesia and India, where there were a lot of folks just in abject poverty, and thinking about how resilience is really important, and how not leaving folks behind in a transition is really important, because we're in the middle of this transition. And if we're not careful, we'll end up with a much more bifurcated haves and have nots around clean energy. And here at San Diego Community Power, we're really focused on making sure that doesn't happen. We have a uh, programmatic plan that we spent about a year developing through a lot of community consultations, which would allow about 50% of our investments into programs flow into our communities of concern, to make sure that we're not leaving folks behind, or at least doing our best not to leave folks behind in this clean energy transition.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I've been fortunate enough to do a good amount of traveling. I remember I went to Peru, and just seeing, the differences in poverty, really kind of makes you realize, as America has its faults, but we really do have it pretty good here. And then you see, what they're living with, what they're making work, and still overall they're pretty happy. It made me kind of come back and be like, well, do I really need to buy this thing on Amazon right now? Or is that just going to end up in a landfill in 6 months? Because it probably will. And that does have like an impact on you. So you mentioned when you wrote your book, you'd weave in a couple more stories. Are there any moments, this could be either revolving around sustainability or business, or any moments that just kind of stick out, from your travels, that had a really big, profound impact on you that you could share with us?
Yeah, there is one. There is one that I think about, that I do believe sort of, uh, when I think about our communities of concern, I think about not leaving folks behind in transition. I had an opportunity when I was in college, and I went to Brazil, and we were studying how, the effects of sort of generational poverty in Northeast Brazil. And I did an independent study where I actually went to sort of more of the eastern part, away from the coast, into the hinterland, in a place called Tocantins, Brazil. And I lived in what we would call a favela there. So I lived there for a month, and same, conditions, and really tried to get my arms around what is happening. And I was maybe 19 at the time, 20 at the time, so very overwhelming experience. And I was, yeah, to this day, there's this sense of, I could leave and come back to this country, and the folks that were there were still going to be struggling for the rest of their lives around just getting access to really, really basic infrastructure, services, opportunities for employment, gainful employment, taking care of their families, feeding their families. I mean, there were all sorts of challenges in that community, but there was also this incredible sense of resilience, this incredible lightness of being in some areas, and so I think about that, reflect on that, and it just, again, it goes back to that kernel of humanity, and this notion that we've got to be inclusive in how we approach this transition. And as a local community here in San Diego, as a national community, and as a global community, because climate change is impacting people very differently, right? Folks that are landless and trying to just eke out an existence on a more desert type of environment are going to really be hit harder by those higher temperatures, say, than folks in coastal communities. in, fairly wealthy areas. And so I just think I think about that, and I think about how, the cycles of poverty and how do you break out of those is extremely challenging. And so how do we help and support folks that are, our communities of concern, and how do we provide opportunities, job opportunities, education opportunities, opportunities to help save energy, and how do we be inclusive in that whole process and make sure we're meeting folks where they're at, we're connecting in their languages. So we've got a long way to go in that regard. But here at SCCP, like we're really thinking about that, and we're only a couple of years old. So we have, we're still like the new kids on the block, if you will. The CCA movement is 25 years old, covering, 200 towns and 14 million customers and 11,000 megawatts, and it goes on. But we were formed in 2019. We didn't even start serving customers until 2021. And now we're the second largest community choice aggregator in all of California, just behind Clean Power Alliance up in Los Angeles. And so, but our focus has really been about being purpose-driven, mission-driven, and community-driven and community-focused. And we're just getting started. We have a long way to go. We've got some really big, audacious goals about how we're going to do this. And I think it's important, like if I think about what's important, how is as important as the what in our world. So we've got our 600 megawatts of new large-scale renewables we're going after. We've got 250 megawatts of local distributed energy resources. We're reinvesting in our communities with a real focus on our communities of concern. Again, those at risk of being left behind during the clean energy transition. And then we've got our JEDI as our core value. That's justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we're really trying to walk the walk and build a new type of organization in the energy space that really values the inclusion of all people and people from all walks of life and perspectives, because we know that makes a stronger team, a smarter team, and that we can be a team that inspires others, to embark on this whole initiative.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure in 7, 8 years of living on 4 or 5 different continents, a lot of memories probably popped into your brain. So thanks for kind of honing in on one. Would love to have you back on and just talk about travel, because I could talk about that all day.
I know you're very interested now. I'll show you some of my photos.
Yeah, I have like 20 different questions about living in the favela in Brazil. But let's talk about San Diego Community Power a little bit. So just kind of on a big picture, tell us what the organization does, and what your sort of role is on a day-to-day basis at San Diego Community Power.
Sure. So we are a local not-for-profit electricity provider here. As I mentioned, we were formed in 2019, served our first customers in 2021, and we're formed by 7 member agencies. So those are Imperial Beach, National City, Chula Vista, La Mesa, Encinitas, and the city of San Diego. So we have now finished all of our mass enrollments, and we are serving nearly 1 million customer meters, which is several million customers. And we have a budget in excess of $1 billion. So we've kind of gone from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, as if we were in an EV. Our mission and vision, as I mentioned, are really central to our organization and who we are. We are community focused, and not only are we getting to 100% clean and renewable power by 2035 or sooner, but we're doing it in a way that's going to create an equitable and sustainable future for the San Diego region.
And how about you? So, I mean, that's such fast, crazy growth in just a few years. Did you start with sort of one location and add on to that, or how did that work? Because you essentially mentioned all of San Diego, that's a lot of land that you mentioned, from Imperial Beach up to Encinitas and the city of San Diego. How did that kind of work?
And I forgot unincorporated county. They're in there too.
Okay.
So we have the founding 5. So the way a CCA is established is it's done through what's called a Joint Powers Authority, which is when the governmental agencies will get together and say, hey, we really want to form this. So the member agencies. So the founding 5 were Imperial Beach, Chula Vista, La Mesa, Encinitas, and the city of San Diego. And so those founding 5 got together, created the Joint Powers Authority. And then, with support from the CEC, and it's a process. There's 20, some of us, 24 of us, I think, in California. So, and we're all structured There's a little bit of changes in differences in how we're structured, but we're structured through a joint powers authority. So we're a government entity, but we're not, and each board member is an elected official from that member agency. So on my board, we'll have various mayors of these areas, we'll have city council members, and we'll have supervisors, because in this most recent enrollment, we enrolled the county of San Diego unincorporated. So all the areas in the whole of the county that were not already incorporated as cities were automatically enrolled. And so it's an automatic enrollment in for all of these, but then that gives you the choice. So until you're enrolled, you don't have choice. So once you get enrolled, then you can choose to opt up to Power 100, which I mentioned at the beginning is going to 100% renewable today. You can stay at our, what we call our Power On service level, which is right now, last year we were about 55-ish%. And this 2022, we're going to be close to 2/3 renewable and carbon free, which is pretty good. Yeah, we're excited. It's going to fluctuate a little, as we go, but we're really working on, we're signing new power purchase agreements that create thousands of jobs, high paying, well paying jobs that create, more electricity infrastructure down in San Diego. We have a local focus. We like to buy energy here locally, and it's going to create more resiliency. And again, we're going to be able to get to that 100% clean and renewable goal.
So that's amazing. I don't have a huge background in sort of the infrastructure technology side of this, so I apologize if I say the wrong words or anything, but can you kind of explain like how the infrastructure and how the distribution actually works for the energy?
Sure. So I guess it's sort of like what we do. So we buy wholesale power from large scale or small scale renewable assets, right? So that could be a solar battery storage farm, could be a wind battery, could be battery only. Batteries are really, showing up as critical for that. When your solar starts coming down and your wind starts poking up, there's a gap there. And that's of course when we need the most energy too. So that's where batteries are really important. We just signed on what's called a Viking solar farm, about, I want to say, 3 or 4 months ago, maybe earlier this year. It's going to be the largest solar peaker plant at least in California, if not the country. And it's basically, I think it's First Solar cells and Tesla megapacks. So we buy that energy, we purchase it. Then we distribute it through the poles and wires of SDG, San Diego Gas and Electric, or SDG&E, the incumbent utility that's been here for 100 years. Right. So we still use all the poles and wires.
Don't get me started on them.
We won't. We're not here to diss SDG&E. I could do that all day long as well. We're not going to do that.
That's right. We'll just leave it at that.
Well, we won't. And but we use that infrastructure, and then the billing system and the meters, of course, also are part of SDG&E. And then the recipients on the end, the homes, the municipal facilities, the businesses receive the energy from us if they're in our member agencies and if they've opted in or stayed.
That's really cool. And so for the individual household or business, how does that work? Do they enroll with San Diego Community Power, and then depending on the time and day and the energy distribution, does it sort of automatically choose where the energy comes from, or how does that work?
Well, so folks are automatically enrolled into our service, and then the billing infrastructure is the same, right? And then you choose a plan, a Power On plan, and there's time of use rates, and there's different rate schedules that you can join depending on what's best for you, right? And I think you can do that through a variety of mechanisms, or you can call and opt out. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, so let me ask it again if I haven't.
I mean, again, I don't know like the technology. So I guess, so you're automatically enrolled if you have a house or home in San Diego. And then I guess, how does it, again, no background in this technology, and we can even edit this out if I sound like dumb or if I'm not answering the right question, asking the right question. But like, how does the energy get distributed? Is it the grid? Is it like artificial technology that says like, this is when peak time is, so we work off the batteries, or how does that work?
Oh, all of that. Oh goodness. All of that's we've got folks that work on, dispatching the energy. I would say we're more on the procurement side.
Got it.
As opposed to on the distribution side and how the energy is flowing through the system.
I see. So in terms of San Diego specifically, where are you seeing the most growth? Are you seeing more growth in the solar farms, wind, combination of both of those?
Oh, in terms of assets that can be developed locally
Yeah,
here, lots
probably
of solar
solar, right?
battery and battery only. Just large scale batteries are huge because the reality of our California system is we have a lot of solar in the system, right? Coming in from 12 to 4. And so what we really need to do is store that solar and then pump it back into the grid at various points where it needs to be through by storing it in the batteries and then feeding it back into the grid from 4 to 9 p.m. So long duration storage is something that folks are talking a lot about in Silicon Valley and here. We're looking at how we can do that. We just have a storage RFO that went out to get some of these 5, 10, 20 megawatt batteries. I mean, that's the biggest thing. We need 10x of what we have today on the grid to be able to produce that reliability and that stability over that peak period.
Yeah, I mean, it must be pretty interesting kind of seeing sort of behind the veil of how quickly this technology is advancing in terms of the solar technology, the battery technology. Is there anything that you're sort of keeping an eye on for the next 5, 10 years? Like, oh man, this is going to come out in the next 2, 3 years and it's going to really change everything, or just sort of trends that, the average person might not know about, but we can kind of keep an eye on for the future?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, we're our biggest challenge is building large scale or enabling, because we don't actually build, we buy, but we enable that construction through signing a contract to buy the energy. And we really want to do that locally here,
Mhm.
create jobs here, and create opportunities here for San Diegans. And so sometimes finding the land to do that is, really challenging. So that's something that is a big challenge for us. On the innovation and technology side, again, I would say long duration storage. We're keeping our eye on all things storage related that can be compact, that can function in all different types of weather, that can go beyond 4 hours. So 8 hour storage is considered long duration storage. What does that look like? And so we're watching, watching what's happening up in the Bay Area, watching what's happening in other countries that may be deploying unique stuff. There'll be a lot on the IoT side, so Internet of Things and building management systems. There's a ton of energy you can save and therefore dollars just by through better energy management. So strategic energy management is something we'll be looking at. This may take the form of programs, demand response, being able to send out a signal to say, hey, we need you to lower your temperature if it's a major, building and things of that nature. Smart thermostats, of course, now they're getting very creative in what they can do. And so I think a combination of just longer storage to address that gap with on the demand side, really managing that energy better, being smarter about it, how you use it, when you use it, where you use it, can both save folks a lot of money and put less stress on the grid. And so the proliferation of storage, large scale and small scale, on homes and businesses, all the way through to big, what we call solar infill, putting it in small land areas that can't be used for anything else, like brownfields would be an example. All that kind of stuff we're keeping our eye on with the goal to get to that 600 megawatts that we need to purchase and then get to the 250 of distributed energy resources to add more resiliency to the grid.
Very cool. So when there's like a build out, let's say a new solar farm being made, do you work with them to sign a contract beforehand and you say, hey, when you're ready, we'll take that energy from you? Is that kind of how that works?
How the process of creating a power purchase agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we
Just getting like a
typically, as
full
a
crash course right now. I'm just going to pick your brain and learn as much as I
how
possibly
much of this are
can.
you going to use, right? So, well, and I'm speaking in, kind of layman's terms here.
Mhm.
So we, as a government entity, right, something of that magnitude, we will always put out for bid. So we'll send out something called an RFO or an RFI. We're looking for feedback. And then all these proposals come in to us about, hey, we're over here. We have this, we have that. This is our pricing. And then we shortlist those opportunities. And often they've had conversations with us just as even before the RFI goes out, like they might introduce themselves and say, hey, we're, such and so, and we're building assets here and there. And that's okay. When the RFI comes out, though, we stop talking to anyone and we go through that process. And typically we have a criteria that we weight. Price is obviously one, location is another, deliverability is really important. Like, can the energy get from point A to point B is really important. Is there enough capacity on the on the infrastructure, on the transmission distribution to be able to receive the energy? Community benefits, like, you're building this somewhere, what are you doing for the community? That's something we are working on and improving and enhancing. Like, what that looks like. Is that setting up foundations? Is that some sort of royalty stream? Is that job creation, internship? Like, there's all kinds of things, all kinds of like, that can look like a lot of different things. And so, but that matters to us. Again, the how is as important as the what in our world. And so making sure we consider our communities and what, how we're benefiting, how this project is benefiting them. And, we're optimizing and we're improving upon that. It's something that as developers reach out to us, we make sure they now know, hey, this is really important to us. You need to be thinking about this if you're planning on approaching us for a contract. And so that's something we've been working on enhancing too over the last couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been really interesting to me kind of watching the growth in the past couple of years, even just, seeing what you were doing a year ago at the last Green Summit to having this conversation today and going from that 50% to 2/3. What's sort of your, maybe 5-year, 10-year vision for where you want to take San Diego Community Power? I'm sure things will change quickly and you'll have to pivot here and there, but where do you sort of see the bigger picture, long-term vision going for San Diego Community Power and really San Diego as a city? And as you mentioned, the national and even international sort of vision for incorporating renewable energy into our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, well, that was a lot of questions in there. Let me break down the first one. Like, where do we see San Diego Community Power going? I think in 5 years, I really see even more progress towards that 100% renewable future. So we might be 75% of the way there. That would be fantastic. And we sort of are charting a course along that direction. Programs. This is something where right now we are just kicking off our programs. One of our first ones was a grant program, right? And we have a couple feed-in tariffs, and we are now just getting approval for what's called our disadvantaged community green solar tariff. There's a couple of those, but I anticipate tens of millions going into programs, which therefore immediately turn around and go into reinvestments in our communities, with 50% of that going to communities of concern. So we're at the very, very tip of that iceberg. And so I want to see that build out a little bit more. And I'm hopeful that we'll be running and moving and investing, tens of millions into our communities. And then really demonstrating that, again, the how is important of the what, and making sure this is a really inclusive, and we do this in a way that's very equitable, affordable, and inclusive. So keeping our customers and our ratepayers first in mind. Like, we need to get there. How do we do that? How do we do it in a way that considers their needs? So hence the community power plan that we've been working on, but also making sure people, like, again, this notion of we've got to get everybody on board here if this is going to work, not just for SCCP. It's going to work regardless, but for the global community and what has to actually happen for us to avert the worst, effects of the climate crisis. And that's really about inclusion. And that's walking the walk and making sure that we're being inclusive as an organization. And then we're being inclusive with our communities and sort of concentric circles, right, around that inclusion, and saying, hey, this is an industry that may have historically looked one way or acted in one way. And this is what's changing. This is the future of the energy industry looks more like we do and acts more like we do. And, you can be very successful and smarter that way. And so that's something we're really excited about demonstrating real time. And that hopefully, again, there's going to be so much opportunity in this industry for the next decade. Let's get a lot of folks involved, and folks that come from different perspectives, bring those different perspectives to decision making, because that makes the decisions smarter. And really just demonstrating that we can do this, and we can do it in a way that's inclusive and equitable and sustainable.
Well, Karin, I want to thank you first off for being here. I want to be mindful of your time. I feel like next time we just have to block off like 3 hours, because my questions today were like, tell me everything you know and everywhere you've been. And we're always just scratching the surface. But one, I want to read your book. So maybe if
Oh
we see
dear.
when we see each other at the Green Summit, you can
Wait
bring me
till I write the
one.
next one. That'll be so much more interesting.
Hey, you gotta get the first one done, and then you improve every time. And that brings me to another exciting announcement. Karin will be one of our presenters at the 2023 San Diego Green Summit. So if you're interested in learning more, meeting Karin, and just getting involved with the clean tech, renewable energy community here in San Diego, we would love to see you there. One last question before you go, Karin. How can our audience and our community get involved, support San Diego community power, and yeah, just kind of what you mentioned, incorporate that renewable energy, sustainable lifestyle into their day-to-day lives?
Well, and I think we kind of hit on that a little bit. First thing is get educated because there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of really great information out there, and just start learning about the energy industry because it touches so much. It touches each of our lives, right? So that's really important. And then I would really encourage folks to visit our site. We're actually getting ready to launch an additional component of our educational campaign about tips and tricks to save money. How do you have more control over your energy use? What does that look like? What can you do, especially in the heat of the summer? And then, we're hiring like crazy. In fact, I'm missing a job interview right now.
I'm
Somebody's
sorry.
in there waiting. No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm really fine. But like get involved in the industry, right? Because now is the time. There's so many opportunities that 10 years from now, there'll be a whole new a workforce that can do all this. Now is the time to get in if that's interesting to folks. And then, you know, be Power 100 champions, opt up to Power 100. Our Power On product is less expensive than the alternative. So our 100% renewable product is basically the same price today that is SDG&E, the old incumbent. And, we really want to see this happen, and we want folks to support that effort. And so come and learn with us, reach out to us. We have folks willing and interested to take calls, to learn, help you get understanding about your energy. And then, you know, yeah, I think that's it
Yeah,
for now.
that's some pretty good stuff. Karin, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll let you go. Good luck in the interview. Hopefully they're a standout person and can help build the organization. I'll film another outro after this. Thank you again. And have a great rest of your day. We'll talk soon.
Okay, take care.
All
Thank you
right.
so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into the episode. My name is Dylan Welch. Appreciate it. As always, stay up to date with the latest information on green.org and dylanwelch.com. Dylan Welch Media is a full-service media and communications agency dedicated to promoting, marketing, and helping businesses in clean tech, renewable energy, and sustainability grow, get more clients, get more customers, get in front of their ideal clientele. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. If you're interested in joining the Green Summit, go to www.green-summit.org. Reserve your ticket today. There's very few spots left, so make sure you get on that ASAP. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.